For today is taken from Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 12, the visit of the wise men. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least amongst the rulers of Judea. For from you shall come a ruler, who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Here ends the scripture for today.
I wasn't trying to mock anybody, but I thought it may be absolute. I'm not going to wear it all the way through. As be one of the kings. You're a cute king, absolutely. Well, from us all, Happy New Year to all of you. May each day be wonderful and may be spent with joy as you move forward into 2020. It's great to be back in the warmth, as Hansi said, of South Africa, and clearly this community, which is very special, and we thought of you a lot. I promise you we thought of you a lot. I can show you pictures of the little church we attended. I wonder if any of you, a few moments ago, like me, were thinking of the words or even singing the words learnt probably at a boys' school, not a girls' school. "We three kings of Orient are, one in a taxi, one in a car, one on a scooter tooting his hooter, smoking a rubber cigar." Those were the only words I could remember. And when Susan said, "You've got to sing a solo," I'm going, I can't sing that. Anyhow, that was it. Epiphany. And that's what it is today, the new beginning, and of momentous proportions for all Christians. My family will tell you that for me, birthdays and New Year's are a strange aberration. I acknowledge that I'm peculiar in this way, and I always question, are they not a quirk of history? Are they not a quirk of the Roman calendar? Any day could be New Year's Day, and a party could be held the night before. Indeed, time over all is really strange. Einstein wrote of his great friend Michele Besso on his death in 1955 in a famous letter to Besso's parents, "Now he has departed this strange world a little ahead of me. That signifies nothing. For us believing physicists, the distinction between past, present, and the future is only a stubbornly persisted illusion." Or as Nike says, who make my shoes, there's no finishing line. It's only beginnings. Beginnings we make and not time. A gentleman by the name of Harvey Mackay, an American businessman and preacher, is quoted as saying the following, which I thought was quite good: "Time is free, but it's priceless. You can't own it, but you can use it. You can't keep it, but you can spend it. And once you've lost it, you can never get it back." Indeed, time was always starting again, unseen, unheard, sometimes unexperienced or experienced, and wasted. We, humans, invented the measurement through sundials and chronometers of various kinds. One has to remember what Einstein said in his explanation about relativity. Imagine yourself on a train moving at about 100 kilometers an hour. You are stationary, but the train is moving. Now imagine you're on the platform and observing the train. It's still moving, and you're still stationary, absolutely relative to where you are. For 2,000 plus years, we are and have been important in God's timeline. A very short period for God and a long one for ourselves. Tricky to comprehend, and more so thanks to Einstein and his quantum physicists, who showed us that 50 years in space, if one should ever spend 50 years up in space, is different to that spent on Earth. In an experiment, the US National Institute of Standards and Technology in Colorado reproved the exercise, and due to living in Johannesburg versus Cape Town, we're aging faster in time, not actuality. The science, frankly, is way beyond me, but it's all still relative. For sure, we cannot change time, but we can change how we perceive it, and we can recognize that the idea whose time has come, can recognize an idea whose time has come and position ourselves and others to do the right thing when it arrives. In the Quantum magazine, of which I understood about a tenth, a gentleman by the name of Dan Falk, a Canadian science writer, presented a debate over the physics of time, and he contends dates are a human prerogative to bring order into the seeming chaos. Otherwise, we don't understand it. So you may ask yourselves, well, why is he rabbiting on about time? Well, Epiphany is a celebration of that aha moment, a life-changing moment when Christ becomes manifest to the Gentiles and a great revelation is made to mankind as the Magi show up at Jesus' birthplace. Professor Mark Powell of the Trinity Lutheran Church in Columbus, Ohio, comments on the ancient Greek word proskuneo. I'm looking at Hansi, wondering if that pronunciation is right. Proskuneo, used in Matthew chapter 2. It's a word that means to worship or to show devotion to God. And therefore Matthew in his chapter acknowledges God's presence in Jesus. A vitally important point. The timing of the visit of the Magi is celebrated in numerous countries, 12 days after Jesus' birth. It's not simultaneously with the shepherd's visit as we conveniently combine in our beautiful nativity scenes. It's hard to actually imagine if you took the 3 wise men away and later brought them out. Or if you refer to Luke, if you took the shepherds away and only had the wise men there because they arrived later. Or that the star, which is hard to see way up there, only appeared later and the angel was up there showing the shepherds where to go. It's an interesting combination, but it does, and please do look at it, it's beautiful. The 3 wise men, they were not kings. That came about as an interpretation of Isaiah 60, verse 3, where it said, nations will come to your light and the kings to the brightness of your dawn. They traveled a long way, from Persia through to Bethlehem, and to recognize the king. Across the Spanish-speaking world, there is the Fiesta de los Tres Regos Magnes. And at that time, presents are exchanged. Many of them don't exchange presents at Christmas. While in German-speaking countries, it's known as Drei Heilige Könige, the three holy kings. And in Ireland, the ladies would enjoy this, a special holiday is held on Epiphany for women, with men cooking and cleaning on that particular day. It's the only day they apparently do it. But in Poland, the Catholic Church chalk on their doors CMB, Christus Masionem Benedicta. May God bless, may Christ bless this house. And across Europe, there are star singers heralding the coming star and collecting for charity of their people's choice. And the little blue fellows are the star singers, and you still see those. Certainly I've seen them in Germany, and they're a bit like our carol singers, and they collect for charity on Epiphany. It is estimated that the gifts brought by the wise men would be worth something in the region of 2.5 million today. But the value of the gift is not what one can get for it. There is a modern calculation for the gifts that I think is more powerful and which I like. Gold, a symbol of kingship. Frankincense, a symbol of deity. And myrrh, an anointing oil and a symbol of suffering. And in fact, in the last hymn, it actually covered that. Again, time has been played with, as before, for prior to 336 AD, there was a Roman holiday in January. So that may have had some effect on the planning here. The dates of Epiphany, Easter, and Christmas only being firmed up in the calendar later in the same year. Christmas coinciding, as we have heard before, with the winter solstice and a pagan holiday. So why 12 days? Well, of course, it took time to travel from Persia to Bethlehem, and the earlier church assigned 12 days. I couldn't find any other reference to why it's 12, but it worked out well in history. Each of the days later on were given saints' names by the Catholic Church. The 29th of December is St. Thomas the Becket's day. The 31st is Sylvester the First's day, who was the Pope of the time. And in the German-speaking countries and possibly elsewhere, that night is still referred to as Sylvester. To celebrate the Magi arriving, the famous carol of 12 Days of Christmas was written in 1780 in a book for children called Milk Without Mischief. In the early days, it was a forfeit or a memory game. Your chance is coming now. We're going to test everybody. Conspiracy theorists had a field day with it. For example, verses had meaning read into them, such as the 3 French hens were supposed to represent faith, hope, and charity, and the 6 geese a laying represented the 6 days of creation. Later they were all debunked by religious scholars, but it's quite fun. This Christmas, as Hansi was telling you earlier, we were in Canada and attended a small reformed and very progressive church in the little town of Canmore, which is way up in the mountains. The Reverend Greg Woodley gave the Christmas message, and in it talked of a book by Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages and the Secrets to Love That Lasts. I use his address of that night, and the basic premise of which is to lead each of us as we progress into 2020. He contends correctly it is a topsy-turvy world, with hatred, exclusion, division dominating us all, and we are endlessly encouraged to be divisive. To which he preached, the power of love is the power that gives life, and it needs people to sign on and say, yes, that's the way I want to live. Jane circulated a little cartoon, which some of you may have read the other day. One character says, why are you so optimistic about 2020? Everything is messed up. And the other little character says, I think it'll bring flowers. And one says, how come? He says, because I planted some. It does depend on how we think. Chapman's book expresses the love language as follows: words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. I'm going to go through them very quickly. Words of affirmation, and I think we need to all think about these, well, I would urge you to. We all come across people who don't get their personhood or their abilities affirmed often enough, or ever. They get overlooked. They get put down in their own families or by virtue of their station in life, and need a kind word or a staunch advocate, needing someone to encourage them as they go forward. Quality time. How we spend our time demonstrates to a large extent what our actual values are. What gets top billing? Is there time in my day or week to breathe deeply, slow down, spend quality time with friends, family, and with God? Receiving gifts was an interesting one for me. He does write about both giving and receiving, but learning how to graciously receive is a very important skill in life. And I must admit, I've always found that very hard myself. Acts of service. God calls us to serve one another, and this can be expressed in many ways. Some short-term, some long-term, sometimes person to person, sometimes organized and done in a group. How can I or may I help becomes a more important question than what's in it for me. And physical touch. Indeed, safe, loving human touch is essential, especially in circumstances where touch is in short supply. The Christmas story speaks of Jesus as God becoming specifically incarnate. That was the angel. No, it was the angel. The Christmas story of Jesus as God becoming specifically incarnate and embodied, and all of these love languages cause us to embody love. Oh, don't worry, it's fun. Angels can fly. Thanks, Blair. Okay, so all these love languages we just I ran through apply. So the question remains, were there really 3 wise men? Were there 3 gifts? Were they really called Melchior, Balthazar, and Caspar? The first mention of which was only made in Ravenna in the 6th century. No matter what they were or what they weren't, they play a huge part as to what Christmas offers, and that is tomorrow's cognizance of all our yesterdays, and with the promise and opportunities vital to today. Start by doing what's necessary, then doing what's possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible. From Francis of Assisi. Christ embraces all, no matter their origin, upbringing, and wealth. His love today offers peace, hope, and joy. So as 2020 has dawned, we keep your eyes and hearts fixed on signs of hope to follow through wherever it leads. Amen.